This is Inside Mside, your favorite podcast for all things Morningside. Here's stories from students, alumni, faculty, and more about what makes the Morningside experience so special. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for another edition of Inside Mside, where we're hearing from some alumni, students, faculty, and more about the amazing things that are happening at Morningside. And today is no exception. Today we have another full house. I'm excited to welcome this entire group to be able to talk about a range of different things going on campus and research that has been going on, conferences that have been attended, the work that is being done, all surrounded by the Morningside Poll. You name it, a lot of things that are going on in the world of political science here at Morningside. And so first and foremost, I want to do what we do. You know me, I'm your host today, Alex Waters, the Director of Alumni Engagement, but I'm joined by here four great guests. I'm going to go around and have them introduce themselves. We'll start with the Associate Professor of Political Science here, Dr. Val Hennings. You wear many, many different titles and roles and hats. Probably, obviously, with my position, my favorite one is fellow alum, but also the Director of the Colonel Bud Day Center for Civic Engagement. I mentioned that you are a professor here, an Associate Professor at Morningside, but then also, I mean, gosh, leading the Morningside Poll, working with students on their research, a range of different things. So if I missed anything, please introduce yourself, Val.
So I'm Dr. Valerie Hennings, Associate Professor of Political Science. I'm the Director of the Colonel Bud Day Center and a very proud 2001 Morningside grad.
Most definitely. Excited to have you. And now we'll go around and let the students introduce themselves. Maybe just a little bit about where you're from, what you're studying, where you're at, and your journey at Morningside, those types of things.
Yeah, so I'm Sam Peterson. I'm a senior from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I'm double majoring in political science and business with a minor in legal studies. And on the Morningside Poll, I've been a fellow for 4 years, so I've been involved with the poll for 4 years. I've also been involved with the Morningside Civic Union, jazz band, and with business honors.
And for those that maybe don't know, the Morningside Civic Union is?
The Morningside Civic Union, it's a nonpartisan group that discusses politics, what's happening state, locally, around the world. We also work with local legislators to bring them to campus, work with speakers to help provide events to people on campus and off campus.
Great.
I'm Hannah Capps. I'm originally from Pottsville, California. I'm a senior studying political science here at Morningside. Like Sam, I've been involved in many things here. Yeah. The Day Center for 4 years. I've been in MCU, student government, and then finishing up with that, I'm head on to grad school at the University of Chicago.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I'm excited. We'll unpack that a little bit more. But that's just a teaser. And then Garrett?
Yeah, I'm Garrett Arbuckle. I'm a junior political science student from Littleton, Colorado. This is my third year on the Morningside Poll. I also am very involved around campus in various capacities with Morningside Civic Union, Residence Life, the Colonel Bud Day Center, and other things as well. Yeah.
Most definitely. And Garrett is no stranger to the pod. Yeah. We've had him on a couple different times. But that should just be a testament, I tell you what, to the amount of things that not only our students do, but I mean, gosh, former student president, all these different roles that Garrett has had. So I'm excited that you could be here back with us and welcome these two new students to the pod to talk a little bit about a range of different things, as I hinted in the beginning. But first and foremost, Val, I would love if you could share with the audience, those that maybe don't know, what the Morningside Poll is. What are we talking about here today? What is that?
So the Morningside Poll is a research initiative that the Day Center has done annually for the past 5 years. And what makes it...
5 years.
Yeah, I know. This is the 5th year. Yeah. And what makes it so unique is that it is a completely student-driven initiative. We do a statewide public opinion survey of Iowa adults, asking them a range of issues about different policy happenings at the international, national, state levels. Yeah. We ask about office holders. And what makes it such an awesome project to just sit back and watch, because that's what I do now as the director, the students do it all, is that it's the entire project. So they design a survey. So we go through, how do you write survey questions? How do you provide survey responses in a way that makes sense? We field the survey and then analyze the results and then present the results in a way that is accurate and meets the professional standards when we're looking at political science research and survey work. So yeah, fifth year.
And I got to imagine, I mean, there's a lot, again, there to unpack that I would love to learn about. But I think starting first and foremost, talk to me about the evolution, because I think that, I mean, 5 years of doing something, obviously you learn. Year one, you're maybe just jumping in and you're like, hey, let's try to figure this out. Year two, maybe you can make some improvements, some changes. But I think even the world of politics in general has really changed over the course of that 5 years. And I got to imagine your processes, some of the things you're seeing, you're evaluating, all those things have even changed itself. Can you maybe talk from a 30,000 foot view of some of the things that have changed over that 5 years?
Well, I think when it comes to with the poll itself, just how that process has evolved here at Morningside with the students. Both Hannah and Sam have been a part of the project for the majority of the years. They weren't here.
Yeah.
It was probably best. They weren't here for either one.
It was in its infancy yet. It wasn't grown up yet.
And I think when I think back to those first few years that these folks did experience, is that when I was brought into the project and why it was something that the Day Center really wanted to move forward with, is that I had experiences as a scholar working on statewide public opinion polls at different institutions. But we wanted to make this different, where undergraduate students would be taking the lead. That doesn't happen elsewhere. It's usually, I didn't get my hands near a poll until I was in grad school.
Yeah.
And I wasn't making any decisions about it.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the goal. And then how do you actually achieve that? It took some time for me to figure out, how do I help and support students in a way that I'm giving them what they need in order to do the work that, so it's accurate, it's professional.
Exactly. Yep.
That it can stand up to any other statewide poll, which it can. And giving them the skills and helping them get to the point where I get out of the way. That's probably one of my biggest lessons, is just figuring out how to get out of their way in a way that, so they can be successful. During the past 5 years, something that we've seen in terms of politics and survey research is that we've had multiple midterm elections, presidential elections, and also just the public's perception of research, political science scholarship, and surveys. So we've seen the evolution of not good surveys and how they've gotten a lot of attention. And that's just been fascinating to go through and learn alongside the students about how do we ensure that what we're doing is not skewed, is not a part of the misinformation machines that are out there. And just figuring that out. So when I think about the past 5 years, we've done a lot of really hard work to make sure that this still is something that is accurate, that can be trusted. We've seen a lot of changes in the amount of trust of a lot of different things, including survey work. So.
Well, exactly. And I got to imagine, so you're laying the foundation, especially early on, right? Making sure that there's actually a framework that the students can work within to really make it effective and accurate, as you said, collection methods, to make sure that you're collecting it, you're analyzing it, everything's accurate and on the up and up, and how that's important and meaningful work. But then I got to imagine, like you said, it went through this whole evolution where now you're almost convincing the public as well, here are our practices, here's why you can trust us, here's our transparent methods of what we're doing and getting them on board just as much probably is just as important now as making sure that the students are set up for success in the very beginning.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the best part has been just the conversations with the students and explaining, all right, this is how we interpret these numbers and these many, many spreadsheets before us. And how do you communicate that to folks in a way that's meaningful? And again, I keep using the word accurate, but we have to make sure that we are doing what we do well. So the information that we're providing folks can be used in a meaningful way.
Yep. And how do you make that data tell a story? What is that telling you? You know what I mean? When you're analyzing all those numbers, it almost feels like X's and O's, right? But it's like, how are you seeing this? How are you telling that story? What's going to make the most sense to maybe someone that wants to glean information from your poll? So with that, let's get some student perspective. So anyone can jump in, but Sam and Hannah, I mean, you guys have been with this since we said like it was in its infancy. Talk about your experience maybe early on as a freshman through some of that evolution in itself as well.
I know definitely, like, starting out as a freshman, like, you're scared to, like, jump in and try to give your input because you're scared of, like, what the seniors are going to say. And you'd be like, who is this freshman coming in trying to tell us what to do?
Yeah.
But it's definitely kind of a lot with that. But then, like, sophomore year, you definitely get more of a hands-on experience and understand what's going on because freshman year is definitely more of, like, the learning stages of what's going on, like, what needs to be done. How do you even ask a survey question? Because before coming to Morningside, I had actually no idea what the heck I was doing with any of that.
Yeah.
So being able to be a part of the day centers taught me a lot with asking questions, how to survey, and the questions that people are willing to answer and the ones that are going to get the best results.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I have trouble with that too, even like in satisfaction surveys. You think about that in your own life. This is Reddit and those things make it easy. It seems easy. I gotta imagine it was challenging.
Yeah. And then junior and senior year, it's definitely awesome to see how much it's grown and how much more students have an impact on it. Because starting in our junior year, we did the first ever data crunch brunch where we actually did all the data analysis ourselves. Because before that, Dr. Hennings did it all by herself. So it's really
God
cool
bless
to...
her.
I don't know how she did that. It's really cool to now be able to do that and directly see how the questions are being answered and everything like that.
I would say too, like what Hannah said, when you're a freshman, you're kind of scared to like take the lead, like go up and kind of put your input in. Yeah. But then we remember our experiences as freshmen. So then we're able to kind of help guide the freshmen, like pair up with them, show like, oh, hey, this is what we've done in the past. This is what's worked. This is what hasn't worked. Because being in that for 4 years, you do see that evolution. It's like when I was a freshman, I remember not really wanting to participate. I came for the free food. Exactly. Right? Like Jones. I was scared to like say, hey, I think we should ask about this because I didn't know what I was going to do. But now I remember this year when we were working on developing research questions, kind of organizing the survey, then the freshmen felt more willing and more able to kind of speak out about why they wanted their questions on the survey, which I never would have thought I would have done. But that's just because...
Almost like you're empowering them.
Yeah.
It's like at this point, as a freshman, maybe the only thing you're confident in is your name. And that's enough. Yeah. Like, yep,
not even that sometimes.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Val, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just one thing that, as you all are talking about your experiences, that it reminds me just how unique this is. Like this doesn't happen within a classroom. This year, we've got a group of 12 folks who are doing this voluntarily. Yeah. We meet over lunches once a week as we're preparing this. So they're not getting credit. It's something because they want to be a part of something like this. Mm-hmm. And we have folks who are first years through seniors. And these folks are people who have been there. I've somehow been able to have them come back every year, which is good. It's the free lunch.
That's a lot.
But it is interesting to see first years and seniors work together. That doesn't usually happen in a classroom. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it might happen in other outside of the classroom experiences. But this is one of those where first years through seniors are working alongside each other. And that's been a lot of fun to watch. You all might not feel that way. But it's been neat because they also find different ways to lead. Yeah. With both what Hannah and Sam, when you were talking about how the first years this year were bringing in their questions, that's a testament to what you all are doing in terms of the culture. I remember, it's been a while, but yeah, being a first year student, that's terrifying. Yeah. But to be working alongside a graduating senior who seems to know what's going on.
Just gotta fake it.
It's fascinating. You don't see that in all of the spaces in a college experience. So that's been a lot of fun to see.
Well, and you have to think of it too, like, I know we have a lot of that interaction on athletic teams and stuff like that, right? Like, you have the JV, you have the varsity, you have people trying to be mentors. But gosh, when you're talking really an extracurricular activity, something you're doing in addition to maybe in athletics or in addition to what else you have going on in campus, and then really focusing on that intellectual work of the research and everything that's going into it. And you might have a wealth of knowledge having done it for 3 or 4 years, but then you're trying to get someone up to speed and really make sure that they feel comfortable voicing their opinions or analyzing some of the things, or at least having an opinion. I think that can be challenging in itself, but also present such great opportunities because they have such fresh eyes. I can see that as well. Now, Garrett, I know that, and I don't remember if Sam, if you said that, but at least serving on the student government, having that perspective in some of that. I mean, and you've been in Washington, right?
Yes.
Previously doing work out there with internships and things like that. Talk a little bit about your perspective from what you've seen, both working with the poll. I mean, gosh, some of the questions, the evolution of politics, all this, you have to have an interesting vantage point.
Yeah, it all is really interesting, from the design on our end to the results that come through, and then knowing a little bit of the background, being with my experience in state government here, but also in Washington D.C. Mainly being on the other end of that phone line, hearing people's opinions, involuntarily hearing people's opinions.
People share them,
versus going out and seeking them out. But it is interesting to see that the responses are similar, and what I enjoy is that everyone kind of gets to see, like when we're looking at these spreadsheets of what people are saying, how surprised everyone is, and how fun it is to kind of see what people are saying, because from then my experience is you take those opinions and we log them and track what they're saying about what issue. Well, this is very intentional. We are setting out to see what issues we want to get versus what people are just going to talk about on their own, and that'll still happen. We still provide the space for people to offer up what they think that's not specific to any sort of legislation that's going on, but just seeing how the surveys really affect what goes on in the official capacity of state office holders and federal office holders, because you work for the public, you see the public, and so that's why when Dr. Hennings was talking about accuracy, that's also very important, because it can be an indicator and a guide for elected leaders and elected officials that are wondering what's going on with their state. Like for Iowa, what is going on in the state of Iowa? What are people thinking? And that becomes a resource to seek that information out.
And it's going to influence that public policy, or maybe people taking a different stand or moving a different direction as a state. You have to ensure that it's accurate and that it's actually what people want, and that I imagine there was a large enough pool and all of these different things that people are going to really pay attention to.
I kind of going off of what Garrett said, I remember my freshman year, we had this legislative luncheon with some local House representatives at the state level. And we were talking about a policy that they wanted to enact. I believe it was stun guns on campus, like legalizing stun guns or tasers on campus. And I remember we were kind of able to say, hey, this is what the majority of Iowans think about legalizing stun guns, because we had that data from the poll and we were able to kind of interpret those numbers and say, this is what Iowa wants in regards to this. Really? Instead of them just not, just doing it. Like they had the data and they had numbers to go after that.
Which, Sam, that brings me to my next question that I had, and it's a perfect segue, is just talk to me about some of the questions you're asking, or really the issues. How do you brainstorm them? How do you come up with them, of where you want to go and what angle? Because I'm sure it's kind of from a nonpartisan place, right? You just want to know what is on people's minds, what are their opinions on different ideas or policies and things like that. Talk about that brainstorming process.
Yeah, so for our questions, a lot of it comes from what's happening in the legislature when we're developing the question. So we look at what laws have been introduced, what's getting a lot of news coverage, because we want to ask about those kind of hot topic issues and see what Iowa feels about those. We also have more salient issues that we talk about, questions we ask throughout each poll. We've got women's health care education. We've asked about legalization of recreational marijuana through the past couple polls too, just to see how the opinions of Iowans change over time, because that's always one of the most interesting. You see, for example, with the legalization of recreational marijuana, we've seen more support the past few years for legalizing it. So just seeing how opinions shift with time and kind of with what's happening in the surrounding states.
Yeah. Either of you want to talk a little bit about maybe what you've seen too on the data as it's coming in previous polls? And I know the next poll is going to be released, and then we'll be able to look over that data, but really looking back, what has spoke to either of you?
I know last year we asked a similar question. We asked about the minimum wage increase with President Joe Biden taking office. And we asked last year an increase, and we set a certain scale of like different dollar amounts for like $7 and $9 for like the state of Iowa. Like we asked different amounts of that to see how it's changed from last year. And then we asked it again in this year's poll just to see the differences, if there is any, if more people are willing to support a higher minimum wage or whatnot like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the question, drafting up the questions and talking more on what the two were talking about, there are some the basic questions that you're going to get on polls, on political opinion polls that people want to know about. There's like the main issues of education, healthcare, things like that. But what I find really interesting is the issues that people care about within our group that they want to ask, but then also issues that they are hearing from their circles outside, and then it matches what's happening on the state legislature or things like that, is that you're hearing about how these issues are affecting people's lives, and then we want to figure out what does everyone think? So it's kind of like, someone asks a thought-provoking question and you're like, oh, well, what do you think? And then it's like, well, what does everyone think? So then we're able to, well, what does Iowa think? What does Iowa think about this? So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, because you often wonder, I think, is it just anecdotal? Am I the only one experiencing this or thinking this or with this perspective? And then as an elected official myself, I mean, I want to know, what does the majority think? What would really impact people? And what can we do to maybe address some of those needs?
And I was going to say, I think, too, part of that is it's because it's an extracurricular, like Dr. Hennings has mentioned. It's not part of a class, which I know some other student-led polls like this around the country, they have it as part of a class, so you have to take that class in order to participate in it and get that experience. But as long as people are free when we meet, they're welcome to come, and we get that influence from other majors, from other disciplines in there too. So we can ask more than just policy questions. We can ask about agriculture. We can ask about like mental health care, those types of things.
A diverse perspective. Yeah, just really kind of getting that influence. And now, I mean, I find myself really wanting to look over years past results. Is that accessible? Where, if someone is listening, where would they maybe be able to go and find some of these results, or at least the analysis that you all have done?
It's where you go to find all things important, the Morningside website.
There you go. Da, 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 da. Exactly.
Yeah, so it's on the morningside.edu website under civic engagement and the Morningside Poll. And you can find all of the results from past polls as well as the 2022 poll.
Great. And now, is there a synopsis? Like, surely all of you talked about the data crunch brunch, which, I mean, that sounds like a good time. But you also, I mean, I'm sure you analyze and kind of have maybe a summary of some of that, right? Am I correct in making that assumption, to kind of be able to analyze? Because surely I will not understand the X's and O's, the ones and the zeros.
So in terms of the website, we provide a summary of all the questions so folks can understand what we asked, as well as the responses that we received. You'll also find information about the data and methods part, just so you can see the process through which we had to go through in order to get these responses. And then we try to break it down in ways that can be beneficial. So there'll be some sort of infographic of some sort that shows.
Always popular.
Absolutely. So those are all available on the website as well. Cool. Something else that is really important when we think about the purpose of this poll is that the data are accessible. So we can't put tons and tons of spreadsheets on the website, but we have had folks ask for the information. And that is absolutely, and that's also meeting the standards of how a poll like this is conducted at universities, making that data available and transparent. And that is something that we also can provide. So fortunately, my contact information is there as well for folks who have follow-up questions.
Most definitely. And now, so if you are listening and tuning into this edition of Inside Mside, I know that you're just as curious as I am. So make sure to check out that website and be able to look for that data. That sounds incredibly interesting. And especially thinking ahead, I mean, looking at when this new data is coming out and when I'll be able to at least look over and dive into that a little bit more, but then comparing it to previous years, I think is really cool. Now, Val, you talked about this early on, but I want you to take a second to really humble brag about yourself, is that it's like, gosh, this is being held to a high standard. I mean, this is being recognized. Am I correct in saying that? I mean, the work that you all are doing?
Yes, in a couple different ways. And I think from the students might have better stories to tell about this. But I think what's really important about the work thus far is that we're seeing it recognized through the profession. So we have students as well as myself taking the data from the Morningside poll and presenting it at in my case, political science professional conferences, which is where my peers and fellow scholars are learning about this information. Sam and I had the opportunity to talk about the Morningside Poll as a part of a research initiative that we are working on as co-authors this year.
Yeah.
But we're also, we get recognized through the press, locally, statewide, as well as nationally. I know that we've been very pleased with some of the hits we've had in terms of how the Morningside University poll has been recognized by things like Real Clear Politics, 538. We're right there alongside those other polls that folks might be familiar with as well.
I mean, that's got to feel good, right?
Yeah,
I mean, as
absolutely.
a student, I mean, I see the smiles
Yeah.
on your face. I mean, but I feel the same way. That makes me really proud.
I was going to say, being able to co-author a paper and work and present it at a professional research conference was something I didn't think I would have had the chance to do before coming to Morningside. But then through my work on the poll, and our paper was focused on the characteristics of people who work on the poll. Mm-hmm. So just being able to like pick brains and kind of figure out what makes other people like to do the poll, and then kind of see what leads to me doing the poll.
Yeah.
And just that whole experience. And one of the cool things that we got to do while presenting was we cited in our like relevant literature, we cited a few scholars, authors, and then we had one of them come to our presentation and ask us questions about our project, who we cited. I don't think she knew we cited her, but just the fact that she was there because our poll was about student learning, and doing that through a poll was really cool and really unique.
Yeah, and talk a little bit about those conferences. I mean, that's kind of great experience and exposure. I mean, not only presenting your ideas, but gosh, Sam, I'd be nervous being challenged by that, right? Like, and then all of a sudden, the person you're citing is right there. But that's got to be great. It's got to be great experience, right? Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, before even coming to Morningside or anything like that, I never thought I would have the opportunity to do something like this. But through the Morningside Poll, through Dr. Hennings, through Dr. McKinley, I started out in my capstone class. It was a foreign policy class. I started out on U.S. foreign presidents and their administrations and commitment to women's and family programs. So I looked at the past 4 presidents, and I looked at to see if their partisanship and their policies were more feminist foreign policy based, or if that is something the United States should even consider, and then how their commitment to women's and family programs were implemented. And through that, I looked at all the executive actions and orders they've ever issued, and I read through and I coded them separately. It took forever.
Wow.
Yeah. With the ones that mention women compared to non-women, to do a comparison across the administrations to see like how Biden compares to Obama or to Trump, vice versa, stuff like that. And with that, I thought Obama was going to like clear everyone out of the water with all of his executive orders and everything. But it was actually surprising to see that Biden compared better to Obama with the women orders. And a big thing that has to do with that is probably his vice president being a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's very interesting. And I know, Garrett, you've done some unique research as well. You want to talk just a little bit about some of your research?
Yeah, so I was also at the same conference. And so where my interest kind of came from to do this sort of research was like, and we had talked about it a little bit, is I've had some experiences working for elected officials and being in the offices and hearing people's opinions and things like that. And then also just being a citizen, seeing that there's a lot of contention right now in the United States. So I was thinking, and so I was looking at what kind of people argue about, where there are some things that we find disagreements, and then I was seeing what components are at play for these sorts of divisions, and then how that applies to specific policy issues, and so I considered generation as a factor that is that is present when people disagree with things, and then I used that lens to then apply it to certain specific issues, the issues of climate change and the issues of marijuana, as those and apply party and generation to see how they interact with each other and what kind of results and where the differences are coming, so that people can't just wave a magic wand and say, oh well, it's a difference between Republicans and Democrats.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I was thinking when you were talking. I was just like, sometimes we make these sweeping statements or stereotypes. And Hannah, you talked about that with your research, is that sometimes you go into it thinking you know exactly what you're going to find. And then maybe it surprises you. Yeah. Or maybe even, I guess you were talking about generationally or even throughout year to year. Sam, you spoke to that about previous years and watching kind of the uptake of public opinion or public acceptance. things like that about varying issues. And it's like, well, maybe it's not a generational thing. Maybe it's not a Democrat versus Republican thing. It's got to be meaningful to be able to look and analyze some of that, I would think, year after year.
And I don't know if I don't know how to express this in a way that makes sense outside of my head, but I'm going to try. They've taken classes with me. They understand this.
Yeah.
But I can't express like just how unique what these folks are talking about, how unique that really is. When I think about my own development as a scholar, I didn't do any of this until I was in grad school. These are undergraduates, and I just don't know how to emphasize that enough. This conference that they're referencing, this is not an undergraduate research conference. I was right there proposing and pitching ideas and hoping to be accepted right alongside these folks. Wow. So this is one of the largest political science professional conferences that we have in our field. And this year we took 7 students who all presented. They had to submit proposals. They conducted original analyses, and they were presenting alongside the best of the best, not just undergraduate students, graduate students, other scholars,
professors,
all
kinds of things.
For better or for worse, we had Sam, he and I were right up there together, standing together, presenting our research as colleagues. And that's something that is not done everywhere. I know through my experience that wasn't always the case, and I think that just is a testament to not only these folks, but the work that has gone into building the political science program. And just also believing that students can do this. If we get out of their way, they can do some really great things.
Give them the tools, invest in them. I mean, for me, it perfectly illustrates the whole idea behind experience matters, right? If we believe in all of you, we give you the tools and the ability, the things that you'll go forward and do are just incredible. Not only here, maybe on this campus, but what we get to go on and watch you do in life as well. And so I'm very excited to have all 4 of you here today. So thank you so much for taking time. I truly appreciate it. And just to remind people that are listening to this edition of Inside Mside, if you're as curious as I am about this data that's going to be released not only about this year, but also look back to maybe those previous years, make sure to check out the website. Go on there, email me if you have any questions. For sure, follow up with any of them if you'd like to learn more. But really, thank you so much for joining us on Inside Mside.
Thank you, Alex.
No doubt.